Speech in the style of Elon Musk. Look, the thing about challenges, real challenges, is that they don't care about your comfort. They don't care how you feel, what your plan was, or whether you thought things would be easier. They arrive uninvited, they interrupt everything. But if you want to build something meaningful, if you want to push the boundaries of what's possible, then hardship isn't optional. It's the core ingredient. Most people think success is about ideas. It's not. Ideas are cheap. Execution is everything, and execution in the real world is brutal. You get punched in the face by reality again and again. Systems fail. People quit. You run out of money. Things explode. Sometimes literally. But every time you hit that wall, you have two choices: give up or learn, iterate, adjust, push again. And this isn't about some motivational slogan. It's physics. Progress is the result of force applied over time through resistance. You can't create velocity without friction. You can't make a rocket fly without overcoming gravity. And you can't become someone capable of doing the extraordinary without being shaped by extraordinary difficulty. See, most people want guarantees before they act. They want the path to be mapped out, but innovation doesn't work like that. You figure it out as you go. You launch a prototype, it fails, you rebuild it. You stay up for 72 hours straight fixing it. You burn through cash you don't have, you question your sanity, and then maybe, you take one small step forward, and that's how real breakthroughs happen. Hardship is the test. It filters out those who want the outcome but aren't willing to endure the process. If you can't handle failure, you'll never build anything new. If you're waiting for the perfect moment, you're already too late. If you're afraid of looking stupid, you'll never ask the questions that lead to real answers. You have to be willing to break things, to fall on your face, to look at something that's not working and say, "Good, let's fix it." People underestimate how much you can take. They'll say it's too risky, too crazy, too hard. Let them. Because every person who ever changed the world did it by embracing what others feared. Not because they were fearless, but because they were obsessed with the mission. You need to care so deeply about what you're building that you're willing to suffer for it. Sacrifice isn't the cost, it's the signal that you're on the right track. Here's the paradox: the more difficult the path, the more meaningful the reward. That's not just true in engineering or science, it's true in life. The version of you who overcomes the hardest moment is always smarter, tougher, and more capable than the one who started. So when things break, and they will, don't retreat. Lean in, study the wreckage, rebuild smarter, keep going. You want to be exceptional, then stop trying to avoid discomfort, embrace it, seek it, use it. You'll find out that hardship isn't your enemy, it's your factory. That's where the tools are forged. That's where clarity is born. That's where real solutions get engineered. So when the challenge comes, and it always comes, don't flinch, don't complain, don't wait for someone else to fix it. Stand up, face it directly, and say, "Good, now I get to build something better." Hardship is not a barrier. It's the proving ground for real innovation. Every significant leap in progress has been born not from convenience, but from necessity and resistance. People often wait for perfect conditions, assuming that ease and clarity will align before they begin. But that's not how anything truly groundbreaking is built. Hardship introduces constraints. Constraints force creativity. When resources are limited, when time is against you, and when failure is breathing down your neck, you begin to think differently. You stop theorizing and start engineering. You stop debating possibilities and start building prototypes. In the friction of real pressure, solutions emerge that otherwise would remain hidden. There's something about being forced into a corner by difficulty that activates a part of the human mind that comfort never does. That pressure creates a sense of urgency, and urgency drives iteration at a pace that theory and planning alone can never replicate. Look at every disruptive technology, every major scientific achievement, every pioneering mission, none of it came from the easy path. It came from people working with broken tools, sleepless nights, setbacks that would demoralize most, and the constant, nagging sense that it might all fail. That's the crucible. That's where resilience is tested and clarity is formed. The people who go on to change industries or even the trajectory of humanity are the ones who, when things break, don't panic. They assess, analyze, and rebuild again and again and again, because they understand that hardship is not the enemy, it's the tutor. The obstacle isn't in the way, it is the way. You learn more in 1 week of failure than in 6 months of speculation. You build faster under pressure than you ever will under perfect planning. You gain sharper focus when the stakes are real and immediate. Most people don't pursue hard problems because hard problems come with risk. They expose your weaknesses. They humiliate your ego. They test your patience. But that's exactly why they're worth solving. Easy problems have already been solved. Safe problems are saturated. The breakthroughs that actually matter live on the edge of failure. That's where the untapped ground lies. That's where no one else is willing to go. And the ones who choose to walk that path, not despite the hardship but because of it, are the ones who shape the future. It's easy to admire success once it's polished and public, but no one sees the back end. The years of prototypes that didn't work, the rejections from investors, the loss of key team members, the blown deadlines, the hardware that melted down or exploded, the software bugs that destroyed months of work. But what you find in those dark moments is your actual capability, not your imagined potential, but the real you, under stress, under pressure, under failure. That's who you are. And if you build in those moments, you develop not just the project, but the resilience required to carry it further. You start becoming the kind of person who can handle bigger challenges because they don't go away. The higher you go, the more complex the problems. If you don't learn to see hardship as a platform instead of a punishment, you'll cap your growth. You'll keep seeking easier tasks and safer ground, and you'll never discover what you could actually achieve. Hardship also destroys illusions. When things go wrong, you can't hide behind branding, behind presentations, behind vision statements. You're forced to deal with the brutal facts of your own performance. You have to look at the system honestly, admit the flaws, and fix them. You can't fake your way through a hard problem. Either the design works or it doesn't. Either the physics checks out or it fails. Either the team holds together or it breaks apart. That raw exposure to truth is invaluable. It removes the fluff. It prioritizes what matters. You begin to optimize not for perception, but for reality. That is how innovation grows, not by maintaining appearances, but by solving the real, messy, technical, financial, and logistical problems that come with doing something new. People often romanticize perseverance, but perseverance is brutal. It means showing up when you've been knocked down 10 times. It means fixing a system that's broken in 6 places without knowing if it will work on the 7th attempt. It means investing effort, time, and resources into something that may never get the recognition it deserves. But you keep doing it because the mission matters, because the challenge is meaningful, because inside the hardship is something worth building. People who embrace hardship develop a different relationship with failure. They stop fearing it, they start welcoming it as a checkpoint. Failure becomes a necessary part of the process, not a signal to stop. The pain is part of the proof that the work is real, and when you truly internalize that, you stop wasting time chasing motivation. You don't wait until conditions are perfect. You don't need someone to inspire you. The work itself becomes the driver. Every setback becomes a prompt for a new idea. Every limitation becomes an engineering challenge. Every disappointment becomes a filter to remove what's weak. It's not glamorous, it's not for show. It's simply the process of building things that don't exist yet, and hardship is the raw material. The stronger the resistance, the more refined the solution needs to be. And that refinement over time produces results that others never thought were possible. Even in the midst of crisis, there's opportunity. Because while most people freeze or flee, the builder moves. The builder analyzes, adapts, and acts. That instinct doesn't come from theory. It comes from training in hardship, from developing muscle memory in chaos, from being burned and still building. That's what separates those who dream from those who do. Not not funding, not credentials, just the capacity to endure and create anyway, to keep solving when others give up, to stay focused when others panic, to push through when nothing is working, because they know the hardship isn't a mistake. It's the test, it's the filter, it's the forge where real builders are made. Failure is essential feedback. Treat it as data, not defeat. In any high risk endeavor, failure is not a detour. It is the primary route through which refinement occurs. When something doesn't work, it reveals something real, something concrete. It shows where the assumptions were wrong, where the system was fragile, where the design had blind spots. Without those failures, you'd be operating in an illusion. Every failed test, every broken model, every collapsed prototype is a message from reality that says, "This doesn't work. Now you know. Fix it." That's incredibly valuable. Failure removes guesswork. It narrows the field, it eliminates possibilities, it clears fog. If you interpret failure emotionally, you miss the point. But if you treat it analytically, it becomes one of the most powerful development tools available. The more complex the mission, the more failure you must be willing to analyze. It is the only reliable path to truth when you're trying to build what hasn't been built before. If you think about how engineering works, iteration is everything. You don't design a perfect product on the first try. You design, you test, it fails, and then you refine. And the better your tolerance for that loop, the faster you make progress. The slower your ego dies, the slower your system evolves. But if you can separate identity from outcome, if you can say, "This failed because the system had a flaw, not because I'm flawed," then you can improve the system without wasting time on self-pity. That mindset is a competitive advantage. Most people get derailed by failure because they take it personally. They feel embarrassed, demoralized, even ashamed. That reaction is understandable, but it's unproductive. If you want to lead innovation, you need to retrain that response. Failure is information. It is part of the process. It is not a signal to stop. It is a signal to look deeper in technical environments. Failure is often the only way to surface critical bugs. When you push a machine to its limits and it breaks, that's the moment you understand where the tolerances actually lie. The data from that breakdown is more honest than any forecast or simulation. The heat maps, the pressure points, the performance logs, they give you insight into what's real. And reality is what you're designing against. You don't want guesses, you don't want hope, you want results grounded in truth. That truth often comes wrapped in failure, but that's a gift, not a punishment. That's the raw data you need to make something durable. When you treat failure this way, you stop fearing it. You become curious instead. What did we miss? What changed under pressure? Where did the structure give way? That kind of questioning moves you forward faster than avoiding risk ever will. Most industries are built around protecting against failure. People are taught to avoid mistakes, avoid criticism, avoid volatility. But avoiding failure also means avoiding insight. It leads to safe designs, incremental progress, and saturated markets. If you want to do something new, failure must be normalized. It must be expected. In fact, if you're not failing often, it probably means you're not trying anything ambitious. You're just repeating what's already known. You're optimizing something small instead of inventing something useful. The willingness to fail, repeatedly, visibly, and with high stakes, is one of the defining traits of a serious innovator, because they know it's not about getting it right once. It's about getting it better every time. And the only way to do that is through a constant loop of testing, failing, learning, and adapting. Look at the most complex systems in the world. Rockets, artificial intelligence, electric grids, planetary exploration vehicles. They do not become reliable without thousands of failures. Those failures are simulated, tested, and experienced firsthand. And the teams that design them aren't ashamed of that. They expect it. They want it early. The worst failure is the one that happens too late. The one you didn't catch during testing because you were afraid to push the system. You want your system to fail while it's still on the table, while you can still change it, not when it's deployed and irreversible. So you push it, you stress it, you provoke the weakness intentionally. That's how serious systems are made. You don't coddle them into reliability. You break them into strength. Failure also acts as a filter for teams. When things go wrong, when the system collapses or the launch is delayed or the code corrupts everything, you get to see who's built for the mission. Who stays calm, who doubles down, who learns, who takes ownership without blame. Those are the people who can go the distance, because they understand that innovation is not a straight path. It's a chaotic sequence of failures and responses. The way a team responds to failure is more important than the original mistake. If your people crumble, if they deflect, if they hide the data or lie about what went wrong, the project is already doomed. But if they engage, if they document everything, if they propose solutions and act fast, you've got a team that can handle growth. That team will win in the long term, not because they avoid mistakes, but because they metabolize them. The marketplace rarely rewards this process in the short term. Investors, customers, and outsiders often want polished stories, clean progress, predictable outcomes. But that's not how invention works. Invention is messy. It's a back on forth grind. It's late nights, surprise breakdowns, system overhauls, budgets exploding, and timelines slipping. That's reality. If you try to hide from it, you stagnate. If you embrace it, you build momentum. The ones who learn to use failure as a directional signal, not a character judgment, end up accelerating past the ones who played it safe. And when the product finally works, when the system finally runs, when the result finally delivers, people will call it genius. They won't see the logs of failed experiments. They won't see the months of debug sessions. They won't see the scraped ideas and exhausted teams. But that's where the genius was forged. In failure, not success, there's a common misunderstanding that failure makes you weaker. It doesn't. Repeated failure builds a kind of strength that can't be faked. It teaches you to think under pressure. It shows you how to recover. It forces you to be ruthlessly honest about what works and what doesn't. It builds humility without destroying confidence, and that combination is rare. Humility says, I can be wrong, so let's learn. Confidence says, I believe we can solve this, so let's try again. You need both. You get both by going through failure with the right frame of mind. Not as defeat, not as shame, but as a necessary phase of growth. So when you step into any ambitious project, the first skill you need isn't creativity or leadership or funding. It's the ability to analyze failure without flinching, to stay rational in chaos, to treat setbacks as data points, not verdicts, to look at what broke and think, good, now we know. That shift changes everything. It frees you from the fear that holds most people back. It lets you move fast, test hard, and adapt intelligently. It creates a feedback loop that powers real progress, because every failure, properly understood, is not a stop sign. It's an arrow pointing to the next version, the next insight, the next solution. Comfort kills urgency. Progress demands discomfort. When things are comfortable, there is no pressure to change. There's no need to innovate, to adapt, or to evolve. Comfort sedates the instinct to improve. It rewards stasis. In comfort, inefficiency can hide. Complacency can thrive. Comfort lulls teams into believing that what worked yesterday will work tomorrow. But progress doesn't come from what's working. It comes from what's broken, what's missing, what's inadequate. That awareness only sharpens under pressure. Urgency is born when you are up against time, when the deadline is real, when the margin for error has evaporated. Discomfort creates movement. It forces decisions. It accelerates growth in a high-performance environment. You want discomfort. Not recklessness, not chaos, but deliberate discomfort. The kind that pushes boundaries and forces reinvention. You design stretch goals. You strip out excess. You compress timelines. You simulate failure. You set the bar higher than what seems reasonable, because that's where real breakthroughs occur. You don't create leapfrog technology by cruising at 80%. You don't find efficiency by padding your day with distractions. You find it when the system is strained, when you have to think 10 times faster and 10 times sharper just to stay in motion. That discomfort becomes the engine of momentum. Without it, people default to average. People often say they want growth, but they resist the discomfort that makes it possible. Growth is inherently uncomfortable. It requires you to abandon what's safe, to operate in uncertainty, to challenge your own assumptions daily. Discomfort is not the enemy. It's the signal that you are expanding. When you're building something ambitious, whether a product, a system, or a new market, you should expect to be uncomfortable most of the time. The deadlines should feel tight, the resources should feel scarce, the problems should feel beyond your current capability. That pressure is where you become better, not just the project. You become sharper. You learn faster. You solve harder problems. You develop a tolerance for difficulty that most people will never experience. The people who thrive in these environments are not the ones who crave balance. They are the ones who lean into the pressure. They look for the edge. They operate better when the stakes are high. They're addicted not to stress but to acceleration. They understand that time is limited and comfort is a distraction. They are constantly engineering tension, not destructive tension but constructive tension. The kind of tension that breaks old patterns and unlocks new levels of performance. And that's not just an attitude, it's a system design. You build teams that challenge each other, not just support each other. You design metrics that stretch possibility. You assign tasks that outpace current skill sets. You work under the assumption that discomfort is the cost of relevance in most organizations. Comfort is the default. Systems are designed to minimize risk. Processes are designed to avoid mistakes. Culture is shaped around consensus, predictability, and ease. But that's exactly how industries become stagnant. That's how technology becomes bloated. That's how companies get disrupted, because while they were optimizing for comfort, someone else was optimizing for speed, efficiency, and reality. You cannot disrupt from inside a comfort zone. You need friction. You need urgency. You need pressure. Those are not signs of dysfunction. They are signs of evolution in high-stakes environments. Comfort is a liability. It dulls reaction time. It hides weak links. It encourages mediocrity. If everything feels stable, it probably means you're not testing hard enough. You're not pushing fast enough. You're not reaching far enough. You don't want false peace. You want real progress. And that means embracing environments where people are constantly slightly out of their depth, always reaching, always adjusting, always learning. The discomfort creates hunger, and that hunger powers execution. Teams that are too comfortable slow down. They procrastinate. They default to routine. They lose urgency. They start to value process over outcome. but in discomfort, outcomes matter more. The mission reclaims focus. The unnecessary drops away. You get clarity through fire. Comfort also limits imagination. When everything works well enough, there's no incentive to reimagine how things could work. Discomfort forces the question, how do we make this better, faster, lighter, smarter? It breaks inertia. It opens up the possibility space. In discomfort, nothing is sacred. No system is off limits. No method is untouchable. That's where real disruption happens. Not when you're refining the same playbook, but when you're forced to throw it out and write a new one. And often that doesn't happen until discomfort makes it impossible to keep doing things the old way. If you're trying to build something truly ambitious, you need to fall in love with that discomfort. You need to rewire your brain so that difficulty excites you. You start chasing it. You start asking harder questions. You stop hoping for an easy day and start looking forward to the one that tests your limits. That shift in mindset is rare, but it's powerful, because most people run from discomfort. They try to design their lives to avoid it. They build routines that protect them from stress. But builders, real builders, go toward it. They know that the more discomfort they can tolerate, the more growth they unlock. The more pressure they can hold, the more power they generate. The discomfort isn't an interruption. It's the process. Discomfort also reveals what really matters. When time is short, when systems are breaking, when things are on fire, your priorities get laser focused. You stop caring about status. You stop obsessing over optics. You care only about the work, the bill, the result. And that purity, that clarity, is what gives discomfort its power. It strips away the noise. It focuses your attention. It pulls you back into the mission with renewed intensity. That's how deep work happens. That's how breakthroughs emerge, not in a comfortable chair with no deadline, but in a high-pressure room with no margin for delay. You want teams that operate like that by default. Not because they're afraid, not because they're burned out, but because they've trained in that environment. They've built the resilience. They've developed the mindset. They trust the process. And they know discomfort is temporary, but the progress it produces is lasting. They know the feeling of hitting a wall and breaking through it. And once you've done that enough times, discomfort becomes familiar, not easier, but less threatening. You don't freeze in it. You act, you adapt, you build. That's how progress compounds. That's how momentum sustains. That's how results scale. By embracing the tension and using it to fuel precision, speed, and innovation. When you encounter resistance, when you feel the discomfort rising, when the project feels like it's too much, that's not a sign to pull back. It's a sign to go deeper, to lean in, to trust that discomfort means you're growing. That tension is proof you're in the zone where things actually change. It's not where most people want to live. But it's the only place where you can build something that lasts, something that matters, something that wasn't there before you started. The obsession with the mission must be stronger than the fear of pain. When you are truly driven by something that matters, discomfort becomes secondary, sacrifice becomes expected, the mission eclipses every excuse, every obstacle, every hesitation. This is not about hype, not about theatrics or slogans. It's about a real internal state where the goal is so compelling, so necessary, so vivid that everything else fades. You stop measuring effort. You stop counting losses. You don't complain about the difficulty because your mind is consumed by what must be built. That level of focus changes how you operate. It overrides resistance. It redefines failure. It sustains you when logic tells you to quit. The obsession is not casual. It's not a phase. It doesn't switch off at night. It burns in the background of everything you do. When that fire is lit, pain doesn't stop you. It sharpens you. Pain is real. Fatigue is real, but neither are as strong as a mission that owns you. You wake up thinking about it. You go to sleep planning it. Every setback becomes a lesson, not a defeat. Every delay becomes a test, not a punishment. And this isn't romantic or easy, it's brutal. Obsession will cost you. It will stretch your mind, your energy, your relationships, your schedule. But that's the nature of real work. That's the cost of doing something that hasn't been done. You don't coast your way to impact, you build it inch by inch while everyone else doubts it, and to do that, the mission must be louder than the pain. The vision must outshine the struggle, otherwise, when things go sideways, and they will, you'll fold. The fear will win, the exhaustion will win, the resistance will win, but if you're obsessed, none of that matters. You keep going because stopping is not even an option. Your brain entertains that kind of internal wiring doesn't come from motivation. It doesn't come from a speech or a quote or a podcast. It comes from clarity, deep personal clarity about what you're building and why it must exist. That's what creates obsession. That's what turns pain into fuel. When the goal is vague, any resistance becomes a reason to quit. But when the goal is precise, pain just becomes part of the process. The frustration, the fatigue, the mental burnout, they don't derail you. They become metrics, feedback, proof that you're still in motion, still pushing, still alive in the work. That's the cost of forward momentum, and you're not afraid of it. You invite it, you absorb it, because you know what's on the other side of it, and that belief, when it's real, makes you unstoppable in a way that people who chase comfort will never understand. There's a very small percentage of people who live this way. They're not the loudest, they're not always the most recognized, but they are always building, always refining, always moving towards something that matters more than sleep or applause or even short-term reward. They are not in love with success, they are in love with the process. The obsession isn't about image or status, it's about work. Tangible, meaningful, often invisible work. And they will endure things that would break most people. Not because they enjoy suffering, but because they've calibrated their minds around something bigger. They've decided that the pain is the path, not the punishment. They've internalized the idea that the harder it gets, the closer they are. They've burned the bridges to comfort. They've replaced fear with precision. That precision shows up in how they think, how they plan, how they respond under pressure. They don't react emotionally to setbacks. They analyze, they recalibrate, they adapt fast, because the obsession forces clarity. You don't have time to wallow. You don't have time to complain. You're too focused, too locked in. The timeline is real. The need is real. The cost of delay is real, and you carry that weight differently when the mission owns you. You don't outsource urgency, you generate it. You don't wait for external pressure, you self-impose it. You don't drift, you don't coast. You operate with intent every single day, even when nothing is working, even when the pressure feels unbearable, even when no one believes in it but you, and that's another thing. The mission has to matter enough that you don't need validation. Obsession doesn't rely on applause. It doesn't seek permission. It doesn't shift based on feedback. It holds its shape under pressure. It continues even when isolated, especially when isolated, because in the deepest moments of creation, you are alone. You are alone with the design, with the failure, with the cost. No one else can carry that for you. The obsession is personal. It's non-transferable. It becomes your compass, your energy source, your mental scaffolding. And once it's locked in, you move differently. You talk less, you execute more, you think long term, you sacrifice what others won't. You choose difficulty on purpose. Not because you want to suffer, but because you know that ease is not the path to anything worth building. That perspective transforms everything. Pain doesn't break you, it focuses you. Pain is no longer the enemy, it's the terrain. It's the resistance you train in. It's the stress that forges precision, and you stop trying to avoid it. You stop praying for an easier day. You ask better questions. How can I optimize under pressure? How can I recover faster? What am I missing in this failure? You don't complain about the storm. You learn to fly in it. You push harder in it. You start solving problems that used to terrify you. You stop needing a map because you've developed the instincts that only obsession can build. And when people ask how you keep going, they won't understand when you say you're just doing what has to be done. They think it's willpower, they think it's drive, but it's obsession, quiet, unrelenting obsession, a mission so embedded in your system that quitting is incomprehensible, that fear is irrelevant, that pain is informative. And in that headspace, you don't need hype, you don't need rewards, you just need space to build, space to think, space to execute. You keep showing up because there is no alternative that makes sense. You keep solving because the unsolved problem haunts you. You keep moving because stillness feels like betrayal. Obsession doesn't burn out like motivation. It sustains itself. It becomes identity, and once it becomes identity, the external world loses influence. Distractions don't pull you. Failure doesn't paralyze you. Success doesn't soften you. You are obsessed with solving the thing, building the thing, finishing the thing. That clarity is rare. That kind of internal order is rare. But when it's there, you become the outlier, the builder, the one who doesn't flinch when it gets hard, the one who keeps building even when no one's watching, the one who sees pain as a tool, not a threat. The one who stops waiting for ideal conditions because the mission is louder than any excuse, stronger than any fear, and more important than your comfort ever will be